Hello, welcome back to another video on why are comic books so addictive. Yes, they are. Um, because of that, I absolutely love to read up on the history of the hobby or peer back in time whenever I could. Um, Recently, I received this awesome fanzine from Patrick, and at first glance at the cover, it looked familiar. I must have seen it before. It came out in 1984 at the thick of my collecting period. I started in 81. By 84, I'm a junior in high school. Um, I am probably at the peak of my enjoyment of the hobby as a youngster because by 1984, I had moved on from my paper route jobs, and I was a grocery. I work at a grocery store bagging, you know, and taking in recycle. So I was moving up, still making. I believe I was making $4 an hour, but I was working 30 to 35 hours a week. Okay, I practically work close to full time. My sophomore, junior, and senior year in high school, I average around 35 hours a week. Is a bagger at the grocery store, and so I'm pretty sure I have seen this and I have flipped through it. And what cemented this was when I saw this spread. Okay, this is 4-page example of what Walt Simonson did as far as drawing a full Thor story in 1967. I'm not sure if this was ever reprinted anywhere. If anybody know about this work of Walt Simonson and it was reprinted somewhere, let me know. I would love to see all the pages, but I will do a scan so that you can see the beautiful work that he did back in 1967 before he broke into the business. The talent was there. This fanzine had a lot of awesome stuff in it. For sure, it focused on Walt Simonson. There's an even picture of Louise. Look at that. Who say little girl didn't collect comic books back then, right? It says Louise right here, talking to a young girl at a workshop. It's a comic workshop. There you go, at the convention, at the World Science Fiction Convention in 1983. But the best part about this fanzine is this article right here. Can you see it? Yes, speculating. Even in 1984, as much as crazy as a hobby is today, speculating has always been around for decades prior to what we know today. So it's always interesting. It's always interesting for me to go back in time and read any articles about speculating, because for the most part it echoes a lot of what we see today. Even you're talking 1984, so 34 years ago. Okay, it's amazing. And of course, it has the two hot books at the time. You have the Thor 337, and of course, Spider-Man 252. And in this article, it talked about how this is not the first time. It brought up a bunch of examples. Okay, in 1972, many people bought multiple copies of first issue of Shazam, and then it talked about 4 years later Howard the Duck, and then it brought up something interesting about how here, I'm just gonna read it, okay? A speculator tries to keep an eye out for certain things in a comic. And it talk about when a new artist take over a title, if he's unknown, a speculator will watch how fans would react, and then of course speculate. And for the most part, that used to be the 80s. Okay, I'm telling you, when I started in this hobby back in the 80s, it's all about chasing the artist. I follow John Byrne, I follow Frank Miller, Bill Sienkiewicz, you name it. Wherever they went, I bought. Whatever book they drew the cover, I bought. And in many ways, that trend has returned, right? Because these days, fans are chasing after speculators, and collectors are chasing after artists that did the covers. Covers collecting is not new. So you have a lot of people chasing after, of course, Adam Hughes, Scott Campbell, you name it. Del Auto, there's many. But based on this, the hobby basically have somewhat come in full circle, somewhat, as far as people chasing artists instead of the characters. Interesting, okay? Listen to this one. Speculators are not held in high esteem by many who collect for the fun of it. They feel speculators tend to drive prices out of the reach of average collectors and prevent new readers from coming into the hobby. Have we heard that recently? Many times. So yes, even in 1984, some people did not like speculators. So it's not new, okay? And then it brought up, how speculating is dangerous, because it brought up how wrong speculators can be, because how the duck can be had for a fraction of what it used to be when it was hot, and a mint-condition 12 years old Shazam number one is said to be worth only 80 cents today. In other words, anyone who decides to speculate in comic books might do well to heed the words of the late Michael Conrad on Hill Street Blues. For those that grew up in the 80s and a fan of the show Hill Street Blues, and I am one of them, what was the phrase he said at the beginning of every show when he's talked to the troops? Be extra careful out there. And then the other part of the article talk about print runs. As you can see, how many copies are out there. And it's interesting, it talk about how Thor 337 didn't really have a big print run, because 336 was fairly not well collected. So 337 only have 4% more as far as the print run, but by 345, by issue 345, the print run has more than double. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how quickly or how hard Thor went from 337 to 345. The print run more than double. And then it talked about how 252, Spider-Man 252, is not all that rare. And how the print run didn't really change, because Spider-Man has always been popular, so the print run of Spider-Man 252 was not much bigger than 251. The one thing that it brought up in this article that was interesting to me was it said how what happens when these books get hot is that the newsstand get a lot less allocation, because a store ran out or sold out, and distributors will send books that were supposed to ship to the newsstand. Some store got the books from the newsstands that was supposed to go to the newsstand. So I have always thought that was the case. Okay, for years I can remember seeing books at my LCS that was both direct sales as well as newsstand. And I asked many people about this, and there is never a definite answers. I would love to find out more on how things was allocated, because we all know how people say, oh, newsstands are more rare because people don't take care of them. But based on what this article talk about, seemed like some newsstand books were shipped to the LCS in the mid 80s, to meet the high demand at the LCS. And that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye bye.